Lightning split the Manhattan skyline as Olivia Reed stared up at the imposing glass fortress of Blackwell Industries, rain soaking through her second-hand blazer. 10 years hadn't been enough to wash away the memory of what happened the last time she faced Alexander Blackwell. Her fingers trembled as she clutched her worn leather portfolio, the one with the small coffee stain she'd tried desperately to remove last night. Inside were her qualifications, her hopes, and her last chance to save everything that mattered. Columbia University, Spring Gala, 2015. And this year's Entrepreneurial Excellence Award, along with the $50,000 grant, goes to... The elegant ballroom fell silent. Olivia's heart hammered against her ribs as she mentally rehearsed her acceptance speech one last time. After 3 years of working double shifts at the campus cafe between classes, sleeping 4 hours a night, and pouring her soul into her microfinance platform for single mothers, this was her moment. Alexander Blackwell for Black Tech Solutions. The crowd erupted in applause. Olivia's smile froze painfully on her face as she watched Alexander rise from his seat at the VIP table, straightening his custom tuxedo with practiced nonchalance. Their eyes met across the room, her shocked green ones, and his triumphant slate gray ones. The corner of his mouth twitched with something close to amusement. Thank you," he said, his commanding baritone silencing the room effortlessly. "I'd especially like to acknowledge my competition." His gaze locked deliberately on Olivia. Ms. Reed's quaint little charity project was certainly heartwarming. Perhaps someday she'll learn that success isn't built on sentiment, but strategy. Soft laughter rippled through the crowd of future industry titans. Olivia felt each chuckle, like a physical blow. Her cheeks burned as whispers surrounded her. Scholarship case. Did she really think she had a chance against a Blackwell? Such a naive little thing. As Alexander accepted the oversized check, pocket change to the heir of the Blackwell fortune, Olivia slipped out of the ballroom, tears blurring her vision. In the empty corridor, she heard footsteps behind her. "Leaving so soon, Reed?" Alexander's voice echoed off the marble. She turned, furiously blinking back tears. "Congratulations on buying another trophy for your collection." "Buying?" His expression hardened. "My algorithm will revolutionize investment banking. Your little project was a glorified GoFundMe page. My little project would have helped real people, not just made the rich richer." Alexander stepped closer, towering over her 5'6" frame. "That's your problem, Reed. You lead with your heart instead of your head." He reached out, brushing a tear from her cheek with his thumb, a gesture somehow more intimate than cruel. "In this world, that's a fatal flaw." She slapped his hand away. "I'd rather fail with integrity than succeed without it." His laugh was low and dangerous. "Noble sentiments from someone who just lost $50,000. Enjoy the view from the moral high ground. I hear the pay is terrible." Present day. "Ms. Reed?" The receptionist's voice cut through her memory. "Mr. Blackwell, we'll see you now." Olivia inhaled deeply, smoothing down her only interview suit, a navy pencil skirt and blazer combo she'd carefully preserved for special occasions. The fabric was slightly worn at the edges, but it was the best she could do. Her mother's cancer treatments had drained their modest savings, and with the bank's final foreclosure notice sitting on their kitchen table, this interview was her last hope. The executive elevator whisked her to the 87th floor. Each ascending floor felt like another step toward a necessary humiliation. When the email had arrived offering her an interview at Blackwell Industries, for a position she hadn't even applied for, she'd almost deleted it as a cruel prank. The doors opened directly into his office suite, revealing a sprawling minimalist space dominated by steel, glass, and breathtaking views of storm-lashed Manhattan. Alexander stood with his back to her, a dark silhouette against lightning-illuminated clouds. The years had refined him, hardened the already sharp edges of his jawline, broadened his shoulders beneath a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. Olivia Reed, he said without turning, her name rolling off his tongue like he'd been practicing it. The girl who wanted to save the world, one desperate mother at a time. She flinched but kept her voice steady. Mr. Blackwell, thank you for the interview opportunity. He turned then, and something flashed in his eyes, a momentary break in his impenetrable facade. Recognition? Surprise? The rain had left her honey blonde hair curling wildly around her face, her makeup minimal and practical. She was a stark contrast to the polished, power-dressed women who typically graced his office. You look... He paused, assessing her with unsettling precision. Exactly as idealistic as you did 10 years ago. Life hasn't hardened you yet. Interesting. Life has taught me plenty, she countered, refusing to be diminished. Including that I should ask why I'm being interviewed for a position I never applied for. A smile played at the corners of his mouth, not warming his features but making him look more dangerous somehow. Straight to business, I appreciate that. He gestured to a sleek leather chair across from his desk. Please, sit. She perched on the edge of the seat, clutching her portfolio like armor. Your mother's cancer treatment at Memorial Sloan Kettering. Stage 3, responding well to the experimental treatment. The treatment that costs $13,500 per month. The treatment your insurance stopped covering 3 months ago. He delivered these facts with clinical detachment, watching her face pale. Your childhood home in Connecticut. 3 missed mortgage payments away from foreclosure. Your student loans, deferred twice now. Shall I continue? A cold weight settled in her stomach. How dare you? I dare many things, Ms. Reed. He slid an elegant black folder across the glass desk, including offering you a solution to all these problems. She didn't touch it. What kind of solution? Marriage. The Hein word hung between them, absurd and shocking. Excuse me? My grandfather's will contains an antiquated clause. I must be married by my 35th birthday, which is in exactly 90 days, or control of Blackwell Industries transfers to my cousin, who would dismantle everything I've built. His expression remained impassive. You need money. I need a wife. Temporarily. Olivia stood, unsteady on her feet. This is insane. This is business. His voice hardened. 1 year as Mrs. Alexander Blackwell. You'll have your own suite in my penthouse, a clothing allowance, and public appearances as required. In return, I'll pay your mother's medical bills in full, save your family home, and settle your student debt. After the year ends, we'll quietly divorce, and you'll receive a settlement of $2 million. Thunder crashed dramatically outside, nature's perfect soundtrack to the moment. Why me? She whispered, hating the vulnerability in her voice. Alexander's smile was slow and predatory. Because 10 years ago you looked me in the eye and said you wouldn't sacrifice your integrity for any price. He stepped closer, close, enough that she could smell his expensive cologne. I've spent a decade wondering if that was true. It is, she said firmly. Everyone has a price, Olivia. His voice softened dangerously. I'm simply offering yours. Your integrity for your mother's life seems like a fair exchange. Tears pricked at her eyes as fury and desperation warred within her. You're a monster. No. His fingers caught her chin, tilting her face up to his. I'm a realist in a world that punishes dreamers like you. The question is, how far will you go to protect what you love? The contract lay open on the desk between them. A devil's bargain written in legal jargon and impossible choices. I'll give you 24 hours to decide, he said, releasing her. Though we both know what your answer will be. As lightning illuminated his face, Olivia saw something unexpected beneath his arrogant mask. A flash of loneliness so profound it mirrored her own. 23 hours and 45 minutes later, Olivia stood in the same spot, watching Alexander methodically sign documents as rain continued to lash against the windows. The storm hadn't broken, neither outside nor within her heart. "You're early," he remarked without looking up, his Mont Blanc pen gliding across paper with practiced precision. "Eager to sell your soul." Olivia clutched the contract he'd given her, its pages dog-eared from her countless readings throughout a sleepless night. "I have conditions." Now he looked up, amusement playing across his features. "You're hardly in a position to negotiate, Ms. Reed." "Then I'll walk out that door, and we can both get what we deserve." The words emerged stronger than she felt. For a moment he studied her, really studied her, as if seeing something new. Then, unexpectedly, he leaned back in his chair and gestured to the seat across from him. 5 minutes. Impress me." Olivia sat, placing her own marked-up version of the contract between them. "My mother's treatment will be fully covered for as long as necessary, not just the duration of our arrangement." "Granted," he said without hesitation. "Next." His easy acquiescence momentarily threw her. "I'll play the part of Mrs. Blackwell in public, but in private, separate bedrooms, separate lives. I'm not becoming my actual wife?" One dark eyebrow arched elegantly. "I assure you, Olivia, if I wanted a real marriage, I'd choose someone who doesn't look at me like I'm something stuck to the bottom of her shoe." Heat rushed to her cheeks. "Then we understand each other." "Perfectly. Continue." "I want a clause that guarantees my employment after our divorce. Not at Blackwell Industries, but a recommendation letter for any organization of my choosing." She met his gaze directly. "And I want you to fund my microfinance platform." His expression hardened. "The one I beat a decade ago? Sentiment clouding your business sense again." "On the contrary. While you've been building tech to help billionaires become trillionaires, I've been refining my platform. It now has a 97% repayment rate and has helped over 300 women start successful businesses on a shoestring budget." She slid a slim folder toward him. "The full business plan and 5-year projections. It's not charity, Alexander. It's sustainable, ethical profit." Reluctantly, he picked up the folder, scanning its contents with irritating speed. His expression remained unreadable, but she caught the slight widening of his eyes at certain figures. $5 million in seed funding," she said. "Less than what you spent on your yacht last year." $4 million, he countered reflexively. "And a board seat for one of my people." "Fine, as long as I maintain controlling interest." Alexander closed the folder with a thoughtful tap of his fingers. "You've put considerable thought into this extortion. I prefer to think of it as making the best of an impossible situation." Olivia straightened her shoulders. "My mother doesn't know about any of this, and she never will. As far as she's concerned, we reconnected, fell madly in love, and you insisted on helping with her medical expenses." "A whirlwind romance," he said with sardonic amusement. "How charming. One more thing." Her voice softened. "The settlement. I don't want it." Now he looked genuinely surprised. $2 million is blood money, she finished firmly. "Fund my company, help my mother, and we're done. I won't profit personally from this arrangement." Alexander leaned forward, his gray eyes narrowing. "Everyone profits, Olivia. That's how the world works." "Not my world." She held his gaze steadily. Something shifted in his expression, a moment of genuine curiosity breaking through his cynical mask. "You really haven't changed, have you?" "Neither have you." But even as she said it, she wondered if it was true. The cruel boy from her past would have laughed at her conditions, not negotiated terms. Alexander pressed a button on his desk phone. "Ms. Chen, please come in with the marriage license and the revised contract." Olivia blinked. "How did you know I'd agree?" His smile was all predator. "I told you, everyone has a price. Yours just happens to be more noble than most." The door opened as his executive assistant entered with documents and a small man who was introduced as Judge Winters. What followed was a blur of signatures and legalities, culminating in the most businesslike wedding ceremony in history. Do you, Alexander James Blackwell, take Olivia Marie Reed to be your lawfully wedded wife? The judge droned, looking bored. I do, Alexander replied, his voice unexpectedly soft as his eyes locked with hers. And do you, Olivia Marie Reed, take Alexander James Blackwell to be your lawfully wedded husband? Time seemed to slow. Olivia thought of her mother in the hospital bed, of the foreclosure notice, of dreams deferred and principles tested. I do. By the power vested in me by the state of New York, I pronounce you husband and wife. The judge snapped his portfolio closed. Congratulations. No kiss, no ring. Just Alexander's assistant handing them each a copy of their marriage certificate with the efficiency of someone completing a routine business transaction. Well, Mrs. Blackwell, Alexander said when they were alone again, testing the name with a strange inflection. Your things are being moved to the penthouse as we speak. My things? How did you? I took the liberty of having your apartment packed this morning. He handed her a small black credit card with her name embossed in silver. Your first duty as my wife is to look the part. My stylist is waiting downstairs. I have standards for anyone associated with the Blackwell name, and that suit. His eyes flicked dismissively over her navy ensemble. Doesn't meet them. Anger flared hot in her chest. You had no right. I have every right. That's what you just signed away. His tone was matter of fact rather than cruel. The car will take you to Bergdorf's first, then to the penthouse. I'll join you for dinner at 8. We have our first public appearance tomorrow, the hospital charity gala. Of course you'd choose a hospital charity for our debut, she said bitterly, reminding me of why I sold myself. Something flashed in his eyes. Was it regret? Impossible. This arrangement benefits us both, Olivia. The sooner you accept that, the easier our year together will be. As she turned to leave, his voice stopped her. One more thing. He approached, pulling a velvet box from his pocket. We need to make this look convincing. Alexander opened the box to reveal a diamond ring, so large it bordered on obscene, flawless oval stone surrounded by a halo of smaller diamonds. Before she could protest, he took her left hand, his touch unexpectedly gentle as he slid the ring onto her finger. The weight of it felt like a shackle. Perfect fit, he murmured, his thumb brushing over her knuckles in a gesture that sent an unwelcome shiver up her spine. Olivia pulled her hand away. Nothing about this is perfect. Perhaps not, he agreed, his expression unreadable. But it is necessary, for both of us. As the elevator doors closed between them, Olivia caught a glimpse of something on Alexander's face, a fleeting expression of uncertainty that humanized him in a way she found far more unsettling than his arrogance. She stared down at the massive diamond glittering on her finger. 24 hours ago, she'd been desperate and drowning. Now she was Mrs. Alexander Blackwell, with a platinum credit card and a year-long sentence in a gilded cage. The question that haunted her as the elevator descended wasn't whether she'd made the right choice, but whether she would recognize herself when this year was over. Olivia stood before the full-length mirror in her new suite, a space larger than her entire apartment, and barely recognized herself. The woman staring back wore a midnight blue gown that hugged her curves before flowing gracefully to the floor, the fabric catching light with each movement. Her honey blonde hair had been transformed by Alexander's personal stylist into an elegant updo that showcased the diamond earrings now adorning her ears, on loan from Blackwell's private collection. Mrs. Blackwell? A soft knock accompanied the voice of Maria, the housekeeper. Mr. Blackwell says the car will be ready in 15 minutes. Mrs. Blackwell. The name still felt like someone else's. Thank you, Maria, she replied, adjusting the obscene diamond on her left hand. Her 24 hours in the Blackwell penthouse had been surreal, The place was less a home than a modern art installation. All steel, glass, and intimidating minimalism. Her suite consisted of a bedroom, sitting area, and bathroom larger than most Manhattan apartments, decorated in tasteful neutrals that felt as impersonal as a luxury hotel. Alexander occupied a separate wing entirely, their paths crossing only once when he returned late from the office. He'd nodded curtly, eyes lingering briefly on her form before disappearing behind his door. The vast penthouse made avoiding each other remarkably easy, a small mercy. Taking a deep breath, Olivia stepped into the hallway and made her way toward the living room. Her new Louboutins clicked against the marble floors, the red soles a reminder of her morning spent with Alexander's stylist, who'd treated dressing her like a challenging professional assignment. "You clean up well." Alexander's voice startled her. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan glittering beyond him like his personal light show. In his perfectly tailored tuxedo, he looked like he'd stepped from the pages of a magazine, devastating and untouchable. "Thanks to your army of stylists," she replied, stopping several feet away. "I feel like an imposter." Something flickered in his eyes as they traveled over her transformation. "On the contrary, you look exactly like what you are now, a Blackwell." "For a year," she reminded him, and herself. The corner of his mouth lifted. "Indeed." He approached, producing a velvet box from his pocket. One final touch. Inside lay a diamond necklace that made her gasp involuntarily, a cascade of stones that caught and fractured light with kaleidoscopic brilliance. "Turn around," he instructed, his voice lower than usual. Against her better judgment, Olivia complied. She felt his presence behind her, the warmth of him just inches away. His fingers brushed the nape of her neck as he fastened the clasp, sending an unwelcome shiver down her spine. "There," he murmured, his breath warm against her skin. "Now you're ready to play your part." She turned to face him, acutely aware of their proximity. "And what exactly is my part tonight?" The adoring new bride who swept New York's most confirmed bachelor off his feet. His smile held no warmth. "We met again 6 months ago at a charity function, reconnected over our shared passion for economic innovation, and after a whirlwind courtship, couldn't bear to wait for a proper society wedding." Olivia arched an eyebrow. "Sounds like you've thought this through." "I leave nothing to chance." Alexander stepped back, restoring a professional distance between them. "The story needs to be believable enough to satisfy the gossips, romantic enough to explain the hasty timeline, and vague enough that you won't trip over details. I'm not an idiot, Alexander, I can maintain a cover story." "Good, because tonight, half of Manhattan's elite will be watching our every move, looking for signs that this marriage is exactly what it is, a sham." His expression hardened. "My grandfather's lawyer will be among them." Understanding dawned. "The one who would give everything to your cousin if you fail." Alexander nodded. "Harold Winters. He's been looking for ways to invalidate the will for years. If he suspects our arrangement isn't genuine, then we'll be convincing," Olivia said firmly. "I agreed to this deal, and contrary to what you believe about me, I honor my commitments." Something like respect flickered in his gaze. "Then shall we, Mrs. Blackwell?" He extended his arm. The ride to the Metropolitan Museum, where the gala was being held, passed in loaded silence. Olivia watched the city blur past, mentally rehearsing their story and preparing for an evening of pretense. "My mother," she said suddenly. "Does she know?" Alexander's expression softened marginally. "I arranged for her to be moved to a private suite at Memorial Sloan Kettering this morning. The experimental treatment begins tomorrow." Relief washed through her. "Thank you. Don't thank me. It's business." The car stopped at the bottom of the Met's iconic steps. Camera flashes immediately erupted as attendants opened their door. "Ready for your debut?" Alexander asked quietly. Olivia took a steadying breath. As I'll ever be. His hand caught hers, warm and unexpectedly reassuring. Remember, you're not Olivia Reed tonight. You're Olivia Blackwell, and you're madly in love with your husband. Quite an acting challenge, she murmured dryly. A genuine chuckle escaped him, the first she'd heard, transforming his features momentarily. You might be surprised. I can be quite charming when required. She was about to retort when he leaned close, his lips brushing her ear. Smile, darling. We've got an audience. Alexander helped her from the car, his hand settling possessively at the small of her back as cameras flashed around them. The touch shouldn't have felt as electric as it did. Mr. Blackwell, over here, reporters called from behind velvet. Ropes. Is this your new wife? When did you get married? Alexander's public persona emerged seamlessly. Charming, confident, and utterly focused on her. Gentlemen, meet my wife, Olivia Blackwell. His smile appeared genuine, eyes crinkling at the corners as he gazed down at her. And yes, she's made me the happiest man in Manhattan. When did this happen? Someone shouted. When you know, you know, he replied smoothly, pulling her closer. The warmth of his body against hers was disconcertingly pleasant. Kiss her, called another voice. Olivia froze. They hadn't discussed this possibility. Alexander turned to her, one hand gently cupping her cheek. His eyes asked a silent question. She gave an almost imperceptible nod, bracing herself for a perfunctory peck. Instead, he leaned down and captured her lips in a kiss that was anything but perfunctory. His mouth moved against hers with unexpected tenderness, the hand at her waist drawing her closer. For one disorienting moment, Olivia forgot this was for show, forgot everything except the surprising softness of his lips and the warmth spreading through her body. When he pulled away, she struggled to mask her reaction. The cameras went wild. That should convince them, he murmured against her ear, his composure infuriatingly intact while her heart raced treacherously. Inside, the museum's grand hall had been transformed into an enchanted garden, dripping with orchids and soft lighting. New York's elite mingled among priceless artifacts, champagne flowing freely as millions were pledged to the Children's Hospital. Alexander. A silver-haired man approached, his smile not reaching his shrewd eyes. Quite the surprise announcement. Your grandfather would be intrigued. Harold. Alexander's posture stiffened imperceptibly. Meet my wife, Olivia. Darling, this is Harold Winters, my grandfather's attorney and trusted advisor. Olivia extended her hand with a warm smile. It's wonderful to meet you, Mr. Winters. Alexander speaks so highly of you. Harold's eyebrows rose slightly at the obvious lie. Does he now? Curious, since I wasn't aware you two were even acquainted until the announcement hit the business wires this morning. We're old university rivals, actually, she replied truthfully. Our paths crossed again at the Economic Innovation Summit last fall. Rivals? Harold's eyes gleamed with interest. How fascinating. Alexander's arm slid around her waist, pulling her against him. Olivia challenged everything I thought I knew about sustainable business models. She's brilliant, stubborn, and completely changed my perspective. The genuine admiration in his voice surprised her. I never stood a chance. Harold studied them, both carefully. Indeed, and such a hasty ceremony. When you've wasted 10 years, Alexander said, his gaze holding hers with unexpected intensity. You don't waste another day. The conviction in his voice was so believable that Olivia felt momentarily disoriented. For a heartbeat, she could almost imagine they were exactly what they pretended to be. Two people who had found their way back to each other after years apart. How romantic, Harold said dryly. I look forward to watching this partnership develop. As he moved away, Alexander released a controlled breath. He doesn't believe us. Then we'll have to be more convincing. Olivia surprised herself with her determination. The evening unfolded in a whirl of introductions and performance. Alexander introduced her to everyone who mattered in New York, society, his hand never leaving the small of her back, his eyes finding hers frequently with manufactured affection. What disturbed her most was how natural it began to feel, laughing at his jokes, leaning into his touch, completing his sentences. "You're quite good at this," he murmured as they swayed on the dance floor, his hand warm against her back. "So, are you?" she replied. "Although I suppose deceiving people comes naturally in your line of work." Instead of the sharp retort she expected, Alexander chuckled. "Not everyone in finance is a shark, Olivia." "Just most of you?" "Just the successful ones." But his smile held a self-awareness that surprised her. As he spun her gracefully, she caught sight of Harold watching them from across the room, his expression calculating. "He's still suspicious," she whispered. Alexander's eyes darkened with determination. "Then let's give him something to think about." Before she could respond, he drew her closer, one hand sliding to the nape of her neck, as his lips found hers once more. Unlike their staged kiss for the cameras, this was slower, deeper, a deliberate show for their audience. Yet, something about it felt dangerously real, his fingers tangled in the hair at the base of her neck, cradling her head as though she were precious. Against her will, Olivia's body responded, melting against him as her hands gripped the lapels of his jacket. When they broke apart, both slightly breathless, the look in Alexander's eyes seemed genuinely startled, as though he too had felt something unexpected. "That was," she began. "Convincing," he finished, his voice rougher than usual. "Harold's leaving. I think we made our point." Reality crashed back. This was an act, a business arrangement between two people who fundamentally opposed each other's values. Nothing more. "Good," she said, stepping back slightly. "Because I'd like to check on my mother before it gets too late." Alexander nodded, composure returning. "Of course. I'll have the car brought around." As they made their way out, accepting congratulations and bidding farewells, Olivia couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that the line between pretense and reality had somehow blurred. Something had shifted between them tonight. Something neither of them had anticipated in their carefully negotiated contract. In the car, they sat in silence, a careful distance between them. Alexander worked on his phone while Olivia stared out the window, touching her lips absently. "You did well tonight," he said finally, not looking up. Everyone was convinced. Everyone except me, Olivia thought, troubled by how easily she'd fallen into their charade, and by the lingering warmth she felt whenever he touched her. This was just business, she reminded herself firmly. The problem was, her body hadn't gotten the memo. 3 weeks into their marriage, Olivia had established a routine that minimized her interactions with Alexander. She rose early, worked remotely on her microfinance platform from the penthouse's glass-walled study, visited her mother in the afternoons, and carefully scheduled her returns to avoid dinner with her husband. On the rare evenings when appearances were required, they performed their roles flawlessly before retreating to their separate corners of the penthouse. It was a carefully orchestrated dance of avoidance, one that worked until the morning she entered the kitchen to find Alexander already there, dressed in running shorts and a fitted t-shirt, casually making coffee. "You're here," she blurted, momentarily thrown by the sight of him in anything other than impeccable business attire. The casual clothes revealed a physicality his suits merely hinted at. He glanced up, amusement flickering in his eyes. "I do live here, occasionally." "You're usually gone by 6. She moved toward the coffee machine, maintaining a careful distance. Board meeting was pushed to the afternoon. He poured a second cup and slid it toward her. "How's your mother?" The question surprised her. Better. The treatment seems to be working. Alexander nodded. Good. After a moment's hesitation, he asked, And your project? Progressing. She sipped the coffee, prepared exactly. How she liked it, she noted with surprise. The funding should be finalized next week. An awkward silence stretched between them. Two people who were legally married, but fundamentally strangers, sharing space in a home that belonged to neither. The Gardner Foundation Gala is Friday, he said finally. Harold will be there. Olivia nodded. I've already confirmed with your assistant. Good. He hesitated, then added, Wear the emerald dress, the one from the Bergdorf fitting. She bristled. Any other instructions for your trophy wife? Something hardened in his expression. It's not about how you look, Olivia. It's about presenting a united front. The emerald matches the necklace from my grandmother's collection. The one Harold knows has only ever been worn by Blackwell wives. Oh. Her indignation deflated. I didn't realize. There's a lot you don't realize. He set down his cup with controlled precision. This arrangement isn't just about satisfying the terms of my grandfather's will. It's about protecting 20,000 jobs and a company that's been in my family for 3 generations. The genuine conviction in his voice surprised her. I thought it was just about power and your inheritance. Alexander's laugh held no humor. If it were about money, I'd have let my cousin take over. I have enough personal wealth to last several lifetimes. He moved toward the floor-to-ceiling windows, gazing out at the city below. Blake would dismantle Blackwell Industries within a year, sell off the profitable divisions, and fire everyone else. Olivia studied him, seeing something she hadn't noticed before. The weight of responsibility etched in the tension of his shoulders. You actually care about your employees. Contrary to your opinion of me, I'm not a complete monster. His voice held a weariness that seemed out of character. My grandfather built this company from nothing. My father expanded it. I've spent my life preparing to protect their legacy. For the first time, Olivia saw Alexander not as the arrogant boy who had humiliated her, or the ruthless man who had manipulated her into marriage, but as someone shouldering burdens she hadn't bothered to consider. I'll wear the emerald, she said quietly. His eyes met hers, genuine surprise followed by something warmer. Thank you. The moment stretched between them, an unexpected truce in their carefully maintained Cold War. The ringing of his phone shattered it. Blackwell, he answered crisply, all vulnerability vanishing as he strode from the kitchen, leaving Olivia with the unsettling realization that her husband might be more complex than she'd allowed herself to believe. That evening, Olivia returned to the penthouse later than usual. Her visit with her mother had been followed by an impromptu meeting with potential investors for her microfinance platform. Executives who suddenly returned her calls now that she carried the Blackwell name. The irony wasn't lost on her. She stepped out of the elevator into darkness, assuming Alexander was working late as usual. But as she moved through the dimly lit living room, the sound of classical music drifted from his rarely used study. Curiosity drew her toward the partially open door. Inside, Alexander sat behind his desk, jacket discarded, tie loosened, a glass of amber liquid in his hand as he stared at financial projections on multiple screens. The strain on his face was evident even in profile. She should have continued, to her room. Instead, she knocked softly. He looked up, surprise registering at her presence. Olivia. You're working late, she observed, hovering in the doorway. Quarterly projections. He gestured vaguely at the screens. Nothing that can't wait. Something in his tone suggested otherwise. Problems? A wry smile touched his lips. Nothing I can't handle. I have an MBA too, you know, she reminded. Him. Top of our class, if you recall. Second in our class. he corrected automatically. Only because Professor Harrington was biased against women in finance. The old argument felt strangely comfortable, a reminder of their shared history. Alexander's expression softened into something almost nostalgic. You never could accept that my algorithm was genuinely better. Your algorithm was flashier, she countered, stepping into the room despite her better judgment. Mine was more sustainable. Perhaps. His admission startled her. I've thought about that more recently. Olivia approached his desk cautiously. Show me what you're working on. He hesitated, then turned one of the screens toward her. European market projections. We're facing unexpected competition from Archer Global. She scanned the data quickly, her analytical mind engaging with the problem. Your diversification strategy is solid, but you're vulnerable in emerging markets. Without thinking, she leaned closer, pointing to specific figures. If you pivot here and here, Alexander watched her with growing interest as she outlined an alternative approach. For the next hour, they found themselves engaged in the kind of intellectual sparring that had once defined their university rivalry, challenging, stimulating, and oddly exhilarating. That's actually brilliant, he conceded when she finished her analysis. Don't sound so surprised, she said, but without her usual edge. I'm not surprised by your intelligence, Olivia. I'm surprised you're using it to help me. The comment brought her back to reality with jarring clarity. What was she doing, helping the man who had essentially blackmailed her into marriage? She straightened, professional distance returning. Consider it protecting my interests. If Blackwell Industries fails, I don't get my funding. Alexander studied her, seeing through the excuse. Of course, purely self-interest. An awkward silence fell between them, broken only when his stomach growled audibly. He looked almost embarrassed, a startlingly human moment from someone who cultivated such careful control. When did you eat last? She asked. He shrugged. Breakfast, maybe. Without analyzing her motives too closely, Olivia found herself saying, I was about to order dinner. There's no reason we can't eat together. Surprise registered on his face, followed by a cautious smile that transformed his features, making him look younger, more approachable. I'd like that. An hour later, they sat at the rarely used dining table, containers of Thai food between them, trading stories about their Columbia days that somehow, with time and distance, had become more amusing than painful. You were insufferable, she informed him, gesturing with her chopsticks. Always raising your hand first, name-dropping your family connections. I was insecure, he admitted with unexpected candor. Everyone assumed I was there because of my family name. I felt I had to prove myself constantly. The admission caught her off guard. You? Insecure? You walked around campus like you owned it. His smile turned self-deprecating. Best defense is a good offense. He refilled her wine glass. What about you? Little Miss Perfect, color-coded notes, first to arrive, last to leave the library. I had to be perfect, she said simply. My scholarship didn't allow for mistakes. Understanding passed between them, a recognition of the pressures that had shaped them both, albeit from vastly different circumstances. For what it's worth, Alexander said quietly. Your microfinance project actually was better, more sustainable, more ethical. I just had better presentation skills and connections. The admission stunned her into momentary silence. Why are you telling me this now? He considered the question, swirling the wine in his glass. Perhaps because after 10 years of carrying guilt, I finally have the opportunity to make it right. Guilt? She couldn't hide her skepticism. You've never struck me as someone burdened by conscience. Then you haven't been looking closely enough. His gaze held hers with unexpected intensity. I've made many questionable decisions in my career, Olivia, but humiliating you that night, I've always regretted it. She wanted to dismiss his apology, to maintain the anger she'd nursed for a decade. But something in his expression, a vulnerability he hadn't allowed her to see before, made that impossible. It was a long time ago, she offered instead. Not that long ago, he countered softly. Not when I forced you into this marriage by exploiting your mother's illness. The acknowledgement hung between them, his first admission that their arrangement was anything other than mutually beneficial. Why did you really choose me? She asked, the question that had haunted her for weeks finally finding voice. There must have been dozens of women who would have gladly played this role. Alexander's expression turned thoughtful. I told myself it was because you had a clear motivation, your mother's health, your financial situation, that you would honor the contract and walk away cleanly when the time came. And the real reason? His eyes met hers, disarmingly direct. I wanted a chance to make amends, I suppose, though my methods were questionable at best. A surprised laugh escaped her. Blackmailing someone into marriage is certainly a unique approach to apology. To her surprise, he laughed too, a genuine sound that transformed his features. Not my finest moment, I admit. For the first time since this bizarre arrangement began, they were speaking honestly, no pretense, no performance. It was both unsettling and strangely liberating. We should do this more often, Alexander said as they finished the meal, his suggestion tentative, almost vulnerable. Eat dinner together? Olivia clarified, uncertain of what exactly he was proposing. Talk, he amended, without agenda or animosity. We're stuck together for 9 more months. It might be easier if we weren't constantly at war. The reasonable suggestion shouldn't have made her heart beat faster. I suppose that makes sense. As they cleaned up together, a domestic task that felt surreally normal, Alexander's phone rang. His expression darkened as he checked the caller ID. I need to take this. She nodded, gathering the last of the containers as he answered. From his clipped responses, she gathered it was business-related and serious. When he hung up, his entire demeanor had changed. The approachable man from dinner replaced by the hard-edged CEO she was more familiar with. That was my head of security. There's been a situation at one of our research facilities. I need to go. Now, it's almost midnight. The helicopter will be waiting on the roof. He was already moving toward his room, presumably to change. Don't wait up. Just like that, the moment of connection was over, reality reasserting itself with jarring clarity. This wasn't a real marriage. Alexander wasn't really her husband. Whatever fragile understanding they'd reached over dinner didn't change the fundamental truth of their arrangement. Yet as Olivia prepared for bed, she found herself thinking about the glimpses she'd seen of the man behind the ruthless businessman. The weight of responsibility he carried, his unexpected admission of guilt, the genuine smile that transformed his face. Dangerous thoughts, she knew. Especially when accompanied by the memory of how it felt to be in his arms as they danced, or the disturbing warmth that spread through her when he kissed her for show. 9 more months, she reminded herself firmly. 9 months. And then she would walk away with her mother healthy, her company funded, and her heart intact. She just had to remember that last part was non-negotiable. You know, Emilia Santos, Olivia's best friend, observed as they strolled through Central Park. For someone in a fake marriage, you mention your husband an awful lot. Olivia nearly choked on her coffee. I do not. In the past 20 minutes, you've mentioned Alexander thinks this or Alexander says that at least 5 times. Emilia's knowing smile was infuriating. Not to mention the way you blush every time his name comes up. That's annoyance, not blushing, Olivia protested, though the warmth in her cheeks suggested otherwise. 8 months into their marriage, of convenience, The careful boundaries she'd established had gradually eroded. What began as occasional dinners had evolved into a genuine friendship, and something more dangerous that Olivia refused to name. They debated business ethics over breakfast, attended charity events where their performances felt increasingly less like performances, and found themselves seeking each other's company rather than avoiding it. The night before, they'd stayed, up until dawn on the penthouse terrace, sharing stories from their childhoods and dreams they'd never told anyone else. When Alexander had reached over to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch lingering longer than necessary, Olivia had nearly forgotten to breathe. "You're falling for him," Emilia said gently, interrupting her thoughts. "I'm not," Olivia insisted, the automatic denial feeling hollow even to her own ears. "It's just complicated. Love usually is. It's not love." The word sent panic fluttering in her chest. "It's Stockholm Syndrome at best." Emilia laughed. "Right. Because discussing microeconomic theory over lasagna is classic kidnapper behavior." Olivia couldn't help but smile at the absurdity of her situation. What kind of person develops feelings for someone who essentially blackmailed them into marriage? The kind who discovers that maybe, just maybe, there's more to that person than she initially thought. There was truth in that. The Alexander she knew now was vastly different from the cruel boy at Columbia or the ruthless businessmen who had proposed their arrangement. This Alexander volunteered at a youth center in his old Bronx neighborhood every Saturday morning, remembered how she took her coffee, and had personally reviewed every medical treatment option for her mother with a determination that went beyond contractual obligation. "It doesn't matter anyway," Olivia said, pushing away unwelcome emotions. "We have exactly 4 more weeks before our arrangement ends and we file for divorce. That was the deal." Emilia's expression softened. "Deals can be renegotiated, you know." "Not this one." Olivia shook her head firmly. "We're just too different. Our values, our approach to business, everything. Are you, though? Your microfinance platform is thriving with his investment. His company has adopted half your sustainability proposals. You've both changed each other." Olivia had no answer for that uncomfortable truth. Under her influence, Alexander had launched an ethics initiative that was transforming Blackwell Industries' approach to global markets. Under his mentorship, she had learned to make her idealism more pragmatic, more achievable. "Even if I did have feelings, which I'm not admitting, there's no evidence he feels the same way." Emilia gave her an incredulous look. "The man looks at you like you hung the moon. Everyone sees it. That's just for show." But even as she said it, Olivia remembered the intensity in Alexander's eyes when no one else was watching, the gentleness in his touch when cameras weren't around. "Keep telling yourself that," Emilia said with a knowing smile. "But maybe ask yourself what you really want before you sign those divorce papers." The Blackwell Foundation Gala, their final public appearance as a couple, was a bittersweet affair. In 3 days, their contract would end. The divorce papers sat in Alexander's study, ready to be filed exactly 1 year from the day they'd made their arrangement. Olivia stood before the mirror in her room, smoothing the silver gown Alexander had chosen for her. A gift rather than a directive this time. It flowed like liquid mercury, elegant yet understated. Around her neck hung the Blackwell sapphires, the most precious pieces in his family's collection, traditionally worn only by those who married for love rather than advantage. When she'd questioned his choice, Alexander had simply said, "They suit you," his expression unreadable as he fastened the clasp. Now, as she made her final adjustments, a soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called, expecting Maria with some last-minute detail. Instead, Alexander stepped through the door, resplendent in his tuxedo, his expression oddly vulnerable. "You look beautiful." "Thank you." She turned from the mirror, suddenly shy under his gaze. "Is it time to go?" "Not yet." He hesitated, uncharacteristically uncertain. "I wanted to give you something first," From his pocket, he withdrew a small velvet box, smaller than the one that had contained her engagement ring nearly a year ago. "Alexander, it's not what you think," he said quickly. "Consider it a thank you gift for fulfilling your end of our bargain." Cautiously, she accepted the box, opening it to reveal a delicate platinum pendant in the shape of an olive branch. "Peace offering?" she asked, touched by the symbolism. A small smile played at his lips. "Something like that. I had it designed to commemorate the launch of the Reed Initiative." "The what?" "I was going to surprise you tonight. The board unanimously approved a $100 million endowment for your microfinance platform, structured as an independent foundation under your complete control." His eyes held hers steadily. No strings attached. No Blackwell oversight. Emotion tightened her throat. "Why would you do that?" "Because you were right," he said simply. 10 years ago, your vision was better than mine. Ethical finance isn't just the right thing to do. It's smart business." He paused, something deeper flickering in his gaze. "And because you've changed me, Olivia. I'm not the same man who proposed our arrangement a year ago." The raw honesty in his voice made her heart race. "I'm not the same woman either." His hands moved to fasten the necklace, his proximity sending warmth cascading through her. When he finished, his fingers lingered at the nape of her neck, a tender gesture that held none of the calculation that had characterized their early interactions. "We should go," she whispered, unable to trust her voice at normal volume. He nodded, offering his arm with the practiced ease of countless galas and events. Yet something felt different tonight. A tension, an unspoken question hovering between them. The Blackwell Foundation Gala was the social event of the season, held at the New York Public Library's iconic main branch. As they ascended the steps, camera flashes erupted around them, their final performance as Manhattan's most enigmatic power couple. Inside, the marble halls had been transformed into an enchanted winter wonderland, crystal chandeliers reflecting off silver and ice blue decorations. Hundreds of New York's elite mingled among rare books and priceless manuscripts, celebrating the Foundation's philanthropic achievements. Mr. and Mrs. Blackwell. Harold Winters appeared before them, his smile sharp as ever. "Your last official appearance together, I understand?" Alexander's hand tightened almost imperceptibly at her waist. "Harold, enjoying the festivities?" "Immensely." Harold's gaze shifted between them with calculating interest. "I must admit, you two have been remarkably convincing. Almost had me believing it was real." "The best arrangements often blur the line," Alexander replied smoothly. Harold chuckled. "Indeed. Though I wonder if you'll be quite so successful with wife number 2. The clock is ticking on your grandfather's stipulation after all. Once you divorce, you'll need to remarry within the year to maintain control." Olivia felt Alexander tense beside her, his jaw tightening fractionally. This was news to her. "I'm aware of the terms," Alexander said coldly. "Just making conversation." Harold raised his champagne glass in mock toast. "To successful ventures, however temporary." As he moved away, Olivia turned to Alexander, keeping her voice low. "You never mentioned having to remarry. It wasn't relevant to our arrangement." His expression remained carefully neutral. "So you'll find another convenient bride when we're done?" The thought sent an unexpected pang through her chest. Something flashed in his eyes. Anger, frustration, or perhaps something deeper. "We should mingle. Blake is watching." Before she could press further, he guided her into the crowd, the perfect picture of a devoted husband. Throughout the evening, they played their roles flawlessly, laughing at the right moments, exchanging affectionate touches, his hand finding the small of her back with practiced ease. Yet beneath the performance, Olivia sensed a new tension. Alexander was more attentive than usual, his gaze lingering on her face when he thought she wasn't looking, his hand holding hers a beat longer than necessary when they danced. You're distracted, she murmured, as they swayed to the orchestra's rendition of The Way You Look Tonight. Just thinking, he replied, his voice unusually soft. About wife number 2? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Alexander's steps faltered momentarily. Is that what's bothering you? Nothing's bothering me, she lied. I'm simply curious about your plans after our divorce. His expression turned guarded. My plans haven't changed. The company remains my priority. Of course. She attempted a light tone. Another business arrangement, then. Would that concern you? There was something searching in his gaze. Why would it? Our deal was always temporary. The words felt hollow, artificial. For a moment, neither spoke, the weight of unspoken feelings hanging between them. Olivia, he began, then stopped as his phone vibrated in his pocket. Checking it. His expression darkened. Excuse me, I need to take this. She nodded, watching as he stepped away, already shifting into business mode. The familiar transformation reminded her of the reality she'd almost allowed herself to forget. Alexander was, first and foremost, devoted to Blackwell Industries. Everything else, including her, was secondary. As the night wore on, Olivia found herself increasingly withdrawn, acutely aware that each moment brought them closer to the end of their charade. By the time they returned to the penthouse, a melancholy silence had settled between them. Would you like a nightcap? Alexander asked, as they entered the familiar space that had somehow become home. No, thank you. She moved toward her room, suddenly desperate for solitude. It's been a long evening. Olivia, his voice stopped her. We should talk. She turned, steeling herself. About? The divorce papers. They're ready to file on Monday. A painful tightness gripped her chest. As agreed. Alexander hesitated, conflict evident in his expression. Is that still what you want? The question hung in the air between them, weighted with possibility. Olivia found herself at a crossroads. Honesty or pride, vulnerability or self-protection. Does it matter what I want? She asked finally. This was always about what you needed. Control of your company, fulfilling your grandfather's stipulation. You've achieved that. That's not an answer. He moved closer, his gaze intent. 1 year ago, I made you an offer based on mutual benefit. I'm asking what you want now. Her heart hammered against her ribs. What I want. She faltered, then straightened her shoulders. What I want is honesty, Alexander. Why did you really choose me? The truth this time. Something shifted in his expression. Resignation, perhaps, or relief at finally confronting what had simmered between them for months. Because I've been half in love with you since Columbia, he admitted quietly. Your brilliance, your integrity, your stubborn idealism, everything I convinced myself was impractical in business, but secretly admired. He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of uncertainty. When I needed a wife, you were the only choice that made sense. The arrangement gave me an excuse to have you in my life, even temporarily. The confession stunned her into silence. I told myself it was strategic, he continued, his voice rough with emotion, that your financial situation and your mother's health made you the perfect candidate. But the truth is, I wanted a second chance, a chance to know you, to make amends for how I treated you. Why didn't you just say that? She whispered. A sad smile touched his lips. Would you have believed me? Would you have even given me the time of day if I'd approached you honestly? She couldn't answer that. Couldn't pretend she would have seen beyond her decade-old grudge without being forced into proximity with the man he truly was. So where does that leave us? She asked, vulnerability making her voice unsteady. Alexander approached slowly, giving her time to retreat if she chose. When she remained still, he took her hands in his touch gentle yet grounding. "That depends entirely on you," he said. "Our contract fulfills my grandfather's requirement. I maintain control of Blackwell Industries regardless of what happens next. The company is secure." "And wife number 2? She couldn't help asking. A smile touched his eyes. "There never was going to be a wife number 2, Olivia. After experiencing a year with you, even under our unusual circumstances, I couldn't imagine being with anyone else." Hope bloomed in her chest, fragile and terrifying. "What are you saying, Alexander?" "I'm saying I don't want our marriage to end." His voice was low, intense. "I'm saying that somewhere between our contract signing and this moment, I fell in love with you. Your brilliance, your compassion, your unwavering principles that have made me a better man and Blackwell a better company." Tears pricked at her. Eyes as walls she'd carefully maintained began to crumble. "This is insane. We're completely different people." "Are we?" He smiled gently. "Or are we just different sides of the same coin? Your idealism and my pragmatism. Your heart and my head." His thumb brushed over her knuckles. "Together, we're better than we ever were apart." The truth of his words resonated within her. Their differences, once seemingly insurmountable, had become complementary strengths over the past year. "I can't promise it would be easy," he continued. "We'd argue about business ethics and corporate responsibility. You'd push me to be better, and I'd challenge you to be more practical. But I can promise you'd never have to compromise your principles or your independence." Olivia searched his face, finding none of the calculation or manipulation that had characterized their early interactions. Only raw honesty and vulnerability. "If we did this, if we tried a real marriage, it would have to be a true partnership," she said. "Equal voices, equal respect. I wouldn't have it any other way." The hope in his eyes made him look younger, more open. "Is that a yes?" Instead of answering, Olivia rose on her tiptoes and pressed her lips to his. Their first kiss that wasn't for show, wasn't part of a performance or contract. Just two people acknowledging what had been growing between them for months. Alexander responded immediately, his arms encircling her waist as he drew her closer. Unlike their public kisses, this one held no restraint, no performance, only the honest hunger of feelings too long denied. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "I'll take that as a yes." She laughed softly. "On one condition." "Name it." His willingness to agree without hearing her terms spoke volumes about how far they'd come. "Burn the divorce papers," she whispered against his lips. "And the contract. From now on, we write our own terms." His smile was radiant, transforming his entire face with a joy she'd never seen before. Deal. Later that night, they stood on the penthouse terrace, watching as the flames consumed the legal documents that had once defined their relationship. As the last pages turned to ash, Alexander pulled her into his arms, his kiss a promise more binding than any contract. "Mrs. Blackwell," he murmured against her lips. Olivia smiled, her heart full. "That's Mrs. Blackwell Reed to you." His laugh was warm against her skin. "Always negotiating." "Always," she agreed, drawing him closer. "Get used to it." And as the New York skyline glittered around them like stars brought to earth, Olivia realized that sometimes the most unexpected arrangements led to the most perfect outcomes, and that love, like the best business ventures, required both the heart's passion and the mind's wisdom to truly flourish. Alexander Blackwell Reed transformed Blackwell Industries with a revolutionary ethical investment division led by his wife. Still intimidates board members, but now champions work-life balance and has a reputation for mentoring women in finance. Olivia Blackwell Reed, Her microfinance platform expanded globally, helping thousands of women entrepreneurs. Published a best-selling book on ethical business practices. Maintains her principles while embracing the influence that comes with the Blackwell name. Harold Winters. Reluctantly retired after attempting to undermine the couple's leadership. Last seen grumbling at their joint philanthropy award ceremony. Emilia Santos. Became godmother to the couple's first child and never tires of saying, "I told you so." Mrs. Reed. Completely recovered from cancer and volunteers at the Blackwell Reed Foundation, where she regularly embarrasses her daughter by showing Alexander baby pictures.